All right, guys, we are here with two notable figures from a recent human powered vehicle race in Michigan near Detroit. We have Mike Mowett and we have Dennis Grelk. Guys, welcome to Laid Back Bike Report.
Thanks, Gary.
All right, so there we go. The human powered. Wait, go ahead and pull that up again. Yeah, the Michigan Human Powered Vehicle Association. So we're going to get to that, Mike. I'm going to ask you right now, actually, about the history of the Waterford races. So let's take that step back and tell us a little bit about what the beginnings of the race were. I know it has quite a heritage. Tell us about it.
Well, the Michigan Human Powered Vehicle Group started in, I believe, 1986 with Mike Eliason, who was there this past weekend. He's kind of the co-organizer still of the event after all these years. Mike Eliason and Terry Grelk got a club together. They used to race down at Monroe County College. In 1987, I believe, we started at the Waterford Hills Raceway. The event, we believe, is the oldest continuous human-powered vehicle event in the world. We've done some research. There's groups in Australia, in Europe that have hosted events over the years, but none of them has had a continuously running event for now going on 37 years. So we're kind of proud of that.
Excellent. Yeah. And maybe to catch us up a little bit, Dennis, tell us a little bit about your history with this event. How long have you been coming?
I started racing in 2005, and I think I made that first year in 2005. So I've been coming to the race every year since then.
All right. Let's talk about the course itself then. This is a car racing course, as I understand it, and you guys use it as a bicycle racing course. Tell us about the course itself. Mike, let's start with you.
The course is 1.4 miles around. That's I was doing the math this weekend. I think it's about 2.2 kilometers. It has 9 turns. It has one hill about 30 feet tall that seems to get taller every lap, as we joke. It was recently repaved during the time of COVID, so they took out some of the bumps and some of the ridges that caused some flat tires before. The track is a car racing club. They can use it only like 2 weekends a month for car racing. So the other 2 weekends are available for like rental of car racing. Bicycle racing. There's some other local riding clubs that also use the track for training on like Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights.
All right, very nice. And Dennis, anything you have to add to that?
The repavement was really a huge thing on that course. It is definitely my favorite course of the season because it is a road course track with hills and corners and hairpins, and it's definitely the most technically challenging course of our series. Plus, it's the only course. Well, that's not true now. We've always been able to camp at this track, so the community, since we have 2 days of racing, the community aspect has always been much greater at this race than a lot of the other ones because we all just kind of hang out after the races and geek out on what we've been building all winter long since it's typically our season opener.
All right. Let's get into a technical detail that probably many people are not familiar with. And I know specifically Mike revels in this, and it's the timing system. So as best you can, describe the way you measure these things.
On our endurance races, our lap races, and our timed event races like the hour-long, we have a transponder system that has the transponders are I can't tell you exactly what the technology is, but it's got a little battery in it. Tag hangs on your bike. Either tape it on or stick it on your scooter or whatever. And then there's a set of timing wires that get placed across the track. And every time you go across that set of timing wires, it triggers a hit. So you have to go out and measure your track to know what the distance is. And we've been doing this long enough. I've got all the distances in the timing system. I just pull up the distance for whatever race we're doing, enter everybody's transponders in there, and then every time you go across it triggers. So that's our long races. Now the sprint races, a lot of those are done off of a pressure tape. So those results are all written down manually and then entered into our spreadsheet afterwards. And the same works for the kilo. That's a pressure tape race, and kilo and sprints. That's mostly what we have throughout the series.
This system that Dennis just described, it runs perfectly, right? You never have any problems with it.
Dennis was out there trying to set a record, which he did, and the transponder readings were actually, I think, as the battery was going low, I was watching the monitor and I saw it was missing some of his laps as he went by at 32 miles per hour. I didn't have the heart to flag him down and say, Dennis, stop, we're not getting records. But so we used his Strava reading after the race. Yeah, this past year, my coworker built a duplicate system off of Warren Beauchamp's plans. Warren was the guy who built, I know he's been on the show many times, he built the original stopwatch timer. He designed the electronic circuitry, so we owe him a huge thanks for his work.
Tell us about Warren's vehicle.
I actually have multiple of Warren's vehicles. So when Warren built the CUDA W, he sold me the original Barracuda. Since I'm I'm 6'4", and really I don't fit in any of the other streamliners, and the market for streamliners for ultra tall people is relatively small. So I ended up with the original CUDA, and I raced the crap out of that for what's it been, 16 years or something. And then Warren had some heart arrhythmia problems, and the CUDA W sat for a few years not being raced, and he wanted it to be raced, so he sold me the CUDA W, and now I'm trying to figure out how to race that one. So this weekend at Waterford was my first real time in the bike at speed. I mean, I did a couple test rides prior, but then it was mostly me trying to learn how to ride the bike during the race, which it's similar but very different than the original CUDA. I mean, it's front wheel drive instead of rear wheel drive, and just way faster. So all the corners were faster. So, yeah.
Good. Well, you raced two bikes, Dennis, then at the race, but let's get back to that. I just wanted to mention Warren there. So, okay, that's going to bring us to the individual events. And Mike, let's get back to you if we could on this one. Why don't we start with Saturday morning, if you would, and let's go from there.
Saturday morning, we usually start out with a 1 hour time trial. So riders ride as many laps around the track as they can. Since we call it a 1 hour time trial, drafting usually isn't allowed. It's pretty easy to do on a track that's 1.4 miles around. People kind of spread out. We only have maybe 15, 20 people on the track at most at a time. So the way we do it there, the way we've always done it, is we ask people to ride 60 plus minutes. Basically, at the end of 60 minutes, we bring out the checkered flag. So if it takes you 61 minutes to come back around and finish the last lap you're on, then we take your total number of laps divided by, say, 61 minutes, and we figure out your average speed, and the furthest distance wins. That's the event we've been doing for a long time at Waterford, so we have some pretty good records of it going all the way back to the 1990s. I remember doing like 18 miles in 1 hour in my very first Waterford, and I had a little certificate on my wall from Bill Fry, and that was really an inspiration to me to kind of come back year after year.
So so Dennis, you actually won this race. Do you want to describe the race as you rode it?
I don't know how much y'all know about the HPRA series, but we break it down by basically the amount of fairing that you have on the bike equals different categories. So this has changed a little bit over the years, but there is a stock class, which is basically, it used to be called unfaired. Well, it used to be called stock, but it was considered unfaired. And that has changed where we have allowed a tail fairing or a nose fairing. So that was a separate category, but now that's all kind of in stock. And then the streamliner category is completely faired, and the streetliner category is also completely fair, but you can either put your feet down or stand up in the bike without moving a piece of fairing. So streetliner would be like Bellmobile's. Streamliner is fully enclosed streamliner. And then stock is pretty much everything else almost. So this particular race that we're talking about would be the stock race. And so I have a tail-faired low racer. It's a dual 700C front-wheel drive. And I've been tweaking on this bike. I built it in 2006, and I've modified it every year to make it faster and faster and faster. It started out as a dual 451 front-wheel drive low racer, and now it is a dual 700C front-wheel drive tail-faired low racer with a splitter. And we've been chasing Frank Geyer's record on this course. He set this record in 2003 on a Jester at like 27 mile an hour, like 27 and a half mile an hour, which is insane because that bike is not anywhere close to as fast as what we're racing now. But somehow he did that. And I've been chasing that record the whole time I've been racing this track. So I finally have my bike fast enough and I trained enough that I managed to get this record at, we averaged 28.688, I believe, which is amazingly fast for a stock bike. So Jonathan is also a super power rider. He's been training super hard with under the supervision of Tom Ollinger, who's kind of his coach. And Tom keeps tweaking his bikes for him, trying to make them faster. And I guess he's been tearing up all the local time trial series with that NOCOM. He came into this race with a higher FTP rating than I had, and I hadn't raced anybody, so I had no idea where I was going to end up. He kept with me for just a little bit, and then I just started walking away from him he said he had about a 10-mile training base, and I come from an ultra distance road background, so I've got plenty of base. Just a matter of me training before the season starts, not just building all the way up to the start of the season.
You came in with 28.623 miles, and Jonathan 28.207. So very close. And then coming in third is John Simon on that crazy Moby Red Streamliner, and we had a little talk with John. We got an interview here, and we can see that. But John did real well at 27.51. So, and then you mentioned Tom Ollinger, who has a training program with a number of guys that he rides with, and he did come in fourth at 25.49.
We also have the university students who show up, and university students are basically there to get time in their vehicles because they don't get a whole lot of ride time. And so when they show up, they're just doing whatever in each race, and you never consistently have one rider in the bike the whole time. So they're switching out bikes and whatever, and it makes for kind of a zoo. But that's how John ended up in the first race, is he wasn't sure we had enough riders to do two. And in the last couple of years, we've had low numbers, and so we've ended up combining races. But since I had this shiny new Streamliner, I wanted to race both.
Can you describe the top three in the second time trial race?
The second time trial was, of course, I was out there in the Cuda W, and then Jeff Hunn was out there in a DF XL, which is he's pretty quick in his Bellmobile. And then the rest was all University of Toronto kids, and had two different Streamliners and a Speed Machine recumbent. Well, that's not right. There's three Streamliners. They had all three Streamliners out there in the Speed Machine that they were cycling on and off. I was out there trying to learn how to take all the corners really fast in a bike that I just started riding, and then Jeff was doing his thing, and his DF and University of Toronto kids, depending upon who was riding, were either riding in a straight line or zigzagging across the road. But I didn't see any of them fall down, so that's good.
You have an event called the Hill Climb
/ Coast Down.
Coast Down, right. So, Mike, let's give you a chance here. Tell us about this event, if you would.
Basically, competitors line up one by one. They ride as fast as they can up the hill. Once over the top of the hill, they start coasting. So they stop pedaling and they coast as far as they can go. This is a unique event we've ran at Waterford for probably 30 years. And it's kind of a two-part event, because if you're a faster, more streamlined bike, chances are you're typically more heavier. You got more mass to push up that hill with your streamlined fairing. However, you're going to roll a lot farther than somebody on a non-faired bike, and this is the case that we see every year. Uh, sometimes all the unfaired bikes, make it around the first turn at the end of the straightaway, and they get caught on a little slight uphill rise, whereas some of the streamliners just keep on rolling for another half mile or 3/4 of a mile around the track. We've always scored it as two separate events, so it's kind of a high value event for the weekend, because you get points in the hill climb, and then you get points in the coast down. One thing we noticed this year was University of Toronto. They didn't really care too much about the actual coast down. A few of them made markings on the track for how far they coasted, but a lot of the riders just went up and down the hill multiple times, and trying to beat their old time or a teammate's time, or trying out their different vehicles. So it was nice to see that, because we like to see people challenging the records. Unfortunately, we don't have really good records of the furthest coasting, because that would require somebody walking around with a wheel or measuring wheel. Dennis, we believe, set the furthest coasting record this year, in probably both the CUDA W Streamliner and on his stock bike.
Yeah, if we can, let's break it down. So you've described it nicely. So first of all, let's talk about this is one ride at a time for this event, but it's broken down into the two categories: the hill climb, where they go up the hill, and then as soon as they reach the top, there's the coast down, and then that's the second part of the event. And you do these separately. So let's talk about the hill climb first.
Jonathan Walters won in the stock category. University of Toronto won in the streamliner category. I had the second fastest time in the stock on my upright bike. The hill is about 28 feet tall, and we have a 600-foot run up. And comparing the start and stop points over the years, we may have, there may have been differences in the starting and stopping points over the years by anywhere between 6 feet and say 20 feet. I have notes from Bill Fry that he used in the past. It was a little bit more complicated. He rolled off some distances from the concrete curbs on the track. We don't know if those curbs have stayed the same with the track repave, but all in all, it takes about anywhere from if you can get up the hill in under 20 seconds, you're probably winning the event. The track record now is about 18 seconds to get up the hill. I really wanted to see Bill Kong from the University of Toronto take a run with his shoes on. He went up the hill several times, but not wearing his cycling shoes with cleats. He's a super strong rider. That team has built their own upright bicycle that won the ASME event. It was a time trial bike, all carbon.
And Dennis, did you want to add to this and maybe then go on to talk about the coast down and your coast down?
So the one consistent thing with the hill climb is that it always does you're climbing to the highest point. So where you start coasting, I think, is probably pretty consistent, because it's always the high point of the hill. But it is interesting to see how this event affects your coast down distance, because I'm not even sure. The difference between the fastest going up the hill and the slowest going up the hill is probably definitely less than 10 mile an hour, and probably less than 5 mile an hour difference between the fast guy and the slow guy. So how that affects your coast down distance, there's probably some difference, but it's not super critical apparently. So that part's interesting.
Basically, we just have every rider takes a piece of chalk, and when they stop, they get off their bike and mark the position of their front wheel.
Dennis, could you give us an idea about how far you went? I know you don't have the number of feet, but we can take a look at the track. Where did you end up basically from the top of that hill?
So on my stock bike, I coasted to where the streamliners normally make it to, and in the streamliner, I coasted past where the stock bike went by probably 50 foot, which is the furthest I've ever seen anybody go. There might have been a streamliner that's gone that far, and I just can't remember. There's definitely not been any stock bikes go that far. That is way, way further. But this is one of the things where this is kind of my favorite event, because every year as I tweak the bikes aerodynamically, you can see if your bike is becoming more efficient throughout the years, which every year I've gone a little further. And yeah, I've made a giant leap on this year. So the more fairing you add, the faster the wheels you put on it, the further you go, the more efficient the bike is. So my stock place ended up past the front stretch into the next corner, going up the hill around that corner, and the streamliner was basically almost to the crest of that same corner, almost to the crest of that next hill before you get back to the bottom of the start of the climb.
Where Dennis ended up was on like turn 2. It's called the Gulch turn, and that is past the main start finish straightaway, and it's probably a good mile, over a mile. I mean, from the start of the hill, and we never had anyone make it all the way back up to the base of the hill, but I guess that would be the furthest possible distance you could go.
Let's move along then to the kilo, the kilometer time trial.
The kilo is the only flat event at Waterford. It starts in the flat on the back stretch and finishes on the flat on the front stretch. So that means you get to go through the hairpin first, which you're starting basically going around the hairpin, so you're not at speed there. And then you go through the S's, and then you go around the swamp across the front stretch, which there's this little tiny grade going up the front stretch. Otherwise, it's flat. And so you're basically accelerating the entire time. And that is, Mike says the streamliners catch up, but it depends on what your streamliner weighs, because you got to get that mass moving, and getting the mass moving without the aid of any sort of downhill means that you got a lot of work to do to get it up to speed, which is why I didn't get, I got fifth in the kilo in the coup de W, because it took me the whole time to even approach getting up to speed. And the kilos they're always hard, because kilos are long enough that they're really long for a sprint, but they're too short for the endurance guys to really make waves at it. So it is kind of the ultimate sprint. Yeah, Jonathan was super fast, and on the no comp, that was almost a record, but Sean Costin did make it over here, and Sean is the best sprinter in our series. Ron Wyatt, coming out of a bunch of knee surgeries, did pretty darn good on the kilo too for second. I got third on my low racer, which 29 mile an hour average on a kilo. It's not terrible, but it's not blazing. And then Tom Ollinger's right behind me on his Raptor.
So after the racing's over Saturday, what happens? What goes on at Waterford there?
Yeah, we do have camping. We have two bathrooms. We have a shower. There's also additional showers outside the track. It's a great, beautiful setting to hang out.
We basically camp in the pit area inside the track, so it's pretty nice. There's some cement pads. There's 110 electricity at the post, so if you need to air up a mattress or plug in a camper, you can do that. And the bathroom, there's bathrooms and showers, so having showers after the races is huge. And there's shelter areas where you can stay under if it's if we get inclement weather. There is shelter that we can sit under in the rain. We haven't had that problem too often, but that does happen. And just waking up in the middle of town in kind of a park setting and a track. It's pretty amazing. There's deer and geese and turtles and all sorts of stuff out there. So, and it's also a gun range, so you got that. But
all right, so let's then now get back to the racing on Sunday morning. Since we've described every event, let's describe the sprints? Where do the racers line up, and how far do they go? What does this look like?
Yeah, for the sprints, we line up one by one at the top of the hill, so you don't have to. You can climb it up slowly, wait your turn in line, and then you get a big blast of acceleration as you take off from the top of the hill. So then you have, I think I measured it out at about a half a mile of acceleration. You come down the hill, go around the first turn. You're on that back straightaway. You're speeding, accelerating. You're looking at two sets of cones coming up. Once you get into those cones, the timer starts. Then 200 feet later, the timer ends. And then this year I worked it out as we did in years past. You have 300 feet to slow down before you hit the turn. I was trying to give the streamliners enough distance to slow down. The track record's held by University of Toronto by Todd Reichert, who also went on to set the world record, still holds the world overall speed record out at Battle Mountain. He did 47 miles per hour one year and then 48 miles per hour the next year in their Vortex, which was again at the track this year. He said he was at the limits of his braking and his tire adhesion, trying to hold it going around that turn after he went through the traps. So yeah, it's a fun event. Dennis, you wanna take it from here?
That is always the trick, is getting slowed down for that hairpin. Uh, this year I hit basically 42 mile an hour in the streamliner, and honestly, after doing the lap races and doing the hour, I was taking that hairpin at 43 or 44, so it wasn't super scary for me. But once again, I'm not a very good sprinter, so 42 is not super fast in a fully paired vehicle. Bill beat me by a little over 2 mile an hour, and Jonathan Walters went really not much slower than I did. He went 41.5 mile an hour, 200 meter. I appear to have gotten second in that sprint at 39.61 mile an hour on my low racer, which I expected to go faster, but I didn't. So it's kind of a stretch. You think the hill would have a lot of speed going into that, but the hill is far enough away from the traps that you actually have to maintain speed or start your sprint after the hill almost before you get to the traps. So.
Right. I love that. I love that phrase, Dennis, that probably a lot of racers use. I expected to go faster, but I didn't. So that's just the way that it works, I guess. Let's move along, guys, if we can, to the final two events that we talk about here, the lap races. So there's a 20 lap race and a 25 lap race, as it turns out.
We ride part of the track backwards, essentially from the other events that we've been running, and then we run part of the course in the usual direction, and we use like the two turnoffs on the track to change direction essentially. So it was a 1 kilometer loop. It was a lot of fun. Dennis set up the timing system for that.
Short course, basically what you're doing is you're going backwards through the S turns and then doing the cutoff across the track entrance road. You do that gulch turn and then go down the back. Well, what would you even call that? The stretch that goes into the hill, and then you turn off right before the hill. So this is a flat short course race, and then take another cutoff, and there's a chicane corner that you got to go through. It's always the trick. It's kind of a mind bender because that cutoff comes into the track at a 90, and you got to make that turn and not either go off into the grass on the inside or the outside. So if you have traffic in that corner, you're going to get hung up. And then really the S turns are kind of tricky in the same way because people will be going from one side of the track to the other. So avoiding the traffic during the short course race is always the trick if you're trying to go really fast. But it does make it interesting. I mean, I'm happy to be doing that race again because the short course race that we did prior to this was just that front stretch. You had basically the same corner going the other direction. And that was just like a million a million sprint intervals instead. This way, you get a little more of a open space and people spread out a little more. So yeah, we did have 2 races at the 20 and the 25. Typically, once again, we'll break that into fairing categories. It's not always the case when you've got university kids showing up, and you've got a little bit of everybody in there. But for the most part, we tried to put the unpaired people in the 20 lap race and the paired people in the 25 lap race, since they're usually going a little faster. Races end up being about the same length. So that's how that breaks down for that. The 20 lap race averaged 27.721, which is that's a good bit faster than anybody's ever done in the stock short course race. That's a fun race. Second place, Jonathan Walters. Jonathan was stuck to my wheel like glue until we got in some traffic and I got away from him. And I think he actually ended up going down at some point there. But otherwise, I thought he was going to get me. And then Tom Ollinger got third, and Robert Lloyd was fourth there. So all our fast guys stayed pretty close together, relatively, during the short course race. And that was definitely the closest racing I did all weekend, was just trying to stay ahead of Jonathan. 25 lap, we actually had pretty much all the paired vehicles. So that was me and John Simon and Jeff Hunt, and the University of Toronto kids were, once again, I think they only had 2 of their streamliners in there because they broke a pedal off. And then they had 2 of their unpaired bikes as well. So averaged 28.126 in the CUDA W, which that's probably the fastest that's ever been done. And John Simon averaged 26.076, which is pretty darn quick in his Moby. John has raced this course probably more than all of us, I feel like, because he is deceptively fast in that bike. Even more so before it got repaved, because he knew all the lines, and staying ahead of him was really hard just because he knew the track so well. And I mean, he's 60, somewhere in his mid 60s, and he's still cooking right along. So it's always fun to see him out there with that thing. And Jeff averaged 23.72 or 732 in his DFXL, which is also pretty good. Just getting right along considering the course and the traffic.
Okay. And we also, one of the ladies that were racing there, Claire Nolette from one of the University of Toronto, was on just the Speed Machine recumbent that you mentioned earlier, and she came in fourth. So good for her. She was an interesting racer as well.
Speaking of John, John was the first bike that I'd seen at Waterford in 1988 when I came to my first event. He's had that red Moby Streamliner forever. It was that same bike set the world like low altitude speed record in the 1980s at the Indianapolis 500 track. It was like it was in Popular Science or Popular Mechanics at the time. And then coming to Waterford and seeing that bike in person, I'm like, wow, that was a bike in Popular Science. And actually, I saw John talking with Isabel from the University of Toronto. She was doing her first race. She told me, and I was trying to get a picture of them together. I got one, like the most senior competitor with one of the new kids on the block. So she rode the Tempest or the Cyclone around in the 25 lap race. Marshall Randall, special shout out to Marshall for, he's a world record holder and everything. From like 100 kilometers to 300 kilometers on his trike. He set a new track record in the 1 hour at 23 and a half miles in 1 hour, breaking the old record by a full 3 miles per hour. I think both the old and the new record were set on green speed trikes.
What's the future of Waterford racing? Do you anticipate next year? Do you have plans for growing it?
Definitely be back next year. Yeah. Every year we got to wait till about January to figure out from the track when we can, what days are available. Yeah, hope to see it grow. Definitely love when University of Toronto comes out there. It's great to see Marshall, maybe some folks from Terra Trike, Whiz Wheels out there. Maybe have a little trike competition again. We've been lacking in the trike competition in recent years. Marshall went flying by me. I'd have to say several times during the 1 hour. I was really, really impressed. And if there's new categories, if someone wants to, I think we can do any category except for e-bike category. I'm not ready to do like an e-bike category because we want to keep it pure human powered.
Okay, so Waterford, there's two more events that haven't been mentioned here. In the past, we have had trike races, separate trike races on the infield of the pits. So they're zigzag back and forth. And we put those together kind of informally, depending upon how many trikes we have. But the last couple of years, we haven't had enough trikes to do it. So if we get more trike people to come out, I'll revive the trike races. And also, there's a practical vehicle event that has happened at Waterford for many years. Didn't happen this year. Basically, there's like a timed course that we do out in the pit area with bags of groceries, and then factoring in the cost of the vehicle and the maneuverability of the vehicle. And it's just something we kind of do as a fun aside thing. It's not part of the points, but it's something we also do as a practical vehicle category it's fun to play with. So this event has been basically what it is for the whole time I've been racing. And really, I don't think we need to improve on it. We just need more people to be aware of it and to come out and join us. Because, it is you couldn't ask for a nicer weekend of racing. And the social aspect of it is great. If you're interested in building bikes, it's a great place to go because you can look at bikes builds that have been built by the people that are racing them. Like, all the streamliners are built by hand. And a lot of the stock bikes are also built by hand by the people that are racing them. It's part of the fun. Because if you really want to go fast, building the bike from scratch is probably the way to do it because you're going to get your best bike fit that way. The rest of the HPRA race series right now consists of a weekend of racing in Chicago at the Northbrook Velodrome on Saturday and then the Kenosha Velodrome on Sunday. That is the 29th and 30th of July. Velodrome races are their own thing. They're super action packed because you're on a lot smaller course with all the people. So it's kind of like you're out there in the start field dodging people. But it's fun, and it's definitely probably the fastest race speeds we have all year because it is a flat course in a velodrome, and it's pretty ideal surfaces usually. And then the last race of the series will be my race at Hawkeye Downs in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. That's a half-mile oval auto course, and it's always the smallest race of the year, but it's same deal. We've got camping on the track, and there's potential for great speeds there if you're in a streamlined bike. And we also have it's actually 3 tracks in one, so it's got a half-mile oval, a 3/8 oval, and then the pit lane inside all share the same front stretch. So my lap races, I have a horseshoe race where it actually turns back on itself and goes backwards on the 3/8 mile, then back around the half mile. And back in the day when I had enough trikes to race, we would do the pit lane and the 3/8 mile, same sort of thing. And it made for pretty fun races. So they're all these events are up at Trumpets.com on the calendar link, and I also post them around in the forums in the racing sections. There is an HPRA Facebook group as well. Everything is also posted there. So if you're on Facebook, look for HPRA, it'll come up. Otherwise, it's in Recumbents.com or Bent Rider. I think that's all the places we spread it, basically.
All right, guys, thanks a lot for talking about the human-powered vehicle racing at Waterford and some of the other racing that goes on that you guys are such great advocates for. Let me just get some final thoughts before we say goodbye. Dennis, go ahead. What do you have to say to finish up?
Anybody that's interested in going fast or seeing any sort of custom build bikes, these HPRA races are a great place to come and look for it. More than welcome to bring whatever you have. You can watch, you can race. There's a wide variety of speeds going on here, so don't feel intimidated by people that are going super fast. There's only a handful of us that are going super fast. and we'd love to see you come out.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to like University of Toronto team, to Tom Ollinger, Robert Lloyd, Jonathan Walters for coming out. You know, they've been part of a great recumbent training group for a long time. This competition really sparks, you know, new ideas, especially with the college team getting time to ride the track. And also to Dennis and everyone who just set the track records. You've spurned John Mersiglio to build a new, even faster bike. So we're gonna be coming for you next year. No, gonna try to. John wants to copy your bike, and so yeah, the ideas are out there now. So that's a great part about Waterford, just sharing ideas and making faster bikes.
So the future, hopefully, of human power racing, University of Toronto, that interaction with the young folks is really important, and the competition that you just talked about, spurring everyone on for faster speeds, more innovation, and lots more fun, human powered racing. So. Thank you both, Dennis, Mike, so much for sharing all that with us. We wish you well, and hopefully we'll see you next year. So long, guys.
Thank you, Gary.